Okay, so the workflow process, though, I'm going to go into one of these, and let's look for the normal change. I believe this is the one that has some of the approvals built in. And so what you'll see here is a graphical representation of the flow for one of my changes that's coming in as I think this was just a standard change request. So you can kind of see there I started my defining criteria. If I open this, is basically just saying that status is normal or standard. Sorry, change type is equal to standard. So when we create it and it puts standard as the change type, then I'm thrown into this particular workflow. It's going to back up to the graphic here. And so you'll notice here as well, so that first state kind of goes into pending approval. And I have to enter this workflow directly into that state. I can do two things at that point. It can be accepted or it can be rejected. And you'll notice this has a check mark, which means I have some approval states that I can enter the approvers for over here on the left. So if I scroll down just a bit, I've got my approval state, my rejection state, who my approvers are. So if I wanted to add additional approvers, I could do this at this point. The other thing that you'll see down under the business rules, my pending approval rule, the pending approval rejection rule, and then my deadline rule. And then again, if I go ahead and hit edit here, you'll get to see again some of the configurations that you can do. Here I've only got the number of approval votes to be greater than 1. So in other words, that one person just needs to approve it. If I wanted to set up multiple approvers and have a unanimous, then inside of here is the criteria that I start to do that configuration. If I wanted as well to do, let's say, an email notification, I'm going to back up one step here. And just under the business rules, so there I'm just doing what we're going to do if we approve or reject and that deadline that's coming up, but I can also do additional business rules here like email notifications. So I want to send an email to that approver that, hey, we're waiting on you to do something, or maybe the deadline is coming near for this particular change request, so I send them a reminder rule. But anything that's on that change form can basically act as a trigger for you to perform some type of business rule on. Okay, and again, very easy to see on this particular graphic. Okay, so then the next part of this is the analytics. And with Service Core, analytics are built into the tool. And so what this means when you need to start developing the criteria to generate that report, it's built into the solution. So there's no third-party tools that are necessary. They're all out of the box. So here when I hit Service Analytics, and I've built up one that we can take a look at, but you'll get the idea as we look at this particular report how you could change a couple of the data points and then have that data be different. So here I've gone, again, just created one. I'm under Custom, and I'm going to look at the changes. And as this is coming up, you'll start to see it's kind of wizard-driven in that you have to enter these pieces one by one, and then, of course, at the bottom is where it spits out the data. But you can see quickly with the asterisk in the red the parts that you're going to have to fill something. So here, my record type, I opted for my change request versus looking at items in my CMDB or the incidents that had been entered or the service request, etc. So this record type is going to let you pull basically anything that may be housed inside of Service Core. Here I'm just giving it a quick title. The report visibility, is it private or am I sharing that with others? I'm looking at it in my dashboard. If we want to look at it in Service Core, to do that as well. This save searches. So here's where you have to create basically a query about what you want to report against. And there I'm basically just looking for all the changes, requests for change that had been recorded in Service Core. On the right here, what fields do you want to display? And then as we come down, I can see very quickly the rows and columns for that report. And then here at the bottom as well, I opted for a pie chart, and I can see very quickly my end users or my staff that have entered in the request for change. And, of course, to the right of them, I can see the sum or that number. And the place that that's done, I'm scrolling up just a little bit. These filters allows me to do the chart. And again, I can see I've done one, so the sum of change requests by who created it. If I wanted to add an additional one, I can very easily do that. Okay, so again, service analytics is essentially the reporting, and you can do that on any, just scroll to the top, on any record that's inside of Service Core. Okay, so Dick, do we have any questions that have come in around change management?
We sure do, Valerie. So thank you, by the way. I think that was excellent. First question here is, what version of FootPrints are you showing? Is it version 12? And if not, what would be the reason to move to version 12?
It is version 12.
Okay.
Yes. So the reason to move to version 12, of course, this you get more functionality, and the back end, i.e. what it's written on, is different and should work more smoothly in the environment as well. So things like the GUI or the graphical interface for the business workflow, the process automation, those are things that are new to Service Core 12. The reporting engine as well is going to be a little bit different.
Okay, good. Okay, next question is, what's the best way to implement a release management option in FootPrints? Should we use the change management?
Yes, sometimes people use change management kind of in coordination with release management. In ITIL speak, though, it's a little bit different. So a change could be things like, I'm going to upgrade the hardware in the server, so I'm taking it from whatever memory up to another memory. So that's just really a change in the environment. Release management, though, could be more around application changes that we have to do. And so what you would see there it could be that you have multiple changes that are making up a release that I need to do in the environment. And so let me go back into, I'm going to go back into this change and the link tickets. So if, for example, this wasn't change management, it was release management, there could be multiple changes that I have linked together for this release that we need to do in the environment. That makes sense?
Yeah.
I don't know if the person, okay. And so they're very similar because I can link multiple incidents to either one of them, but a release versus a change, I could potentially have additional or multiple changes that make up that release, whereas my change management, this could have been multiple people were calling in about a particular application, so I needed or service, and so I just really need to change that service. But yes, oftentimes they are used hand in hand.
Right. Well, release management, maybe you were going to do a Windows 10 migration or something like that, right? And so it's a very big deal, and you want to schedule that way in advance. Would that be an example then?
Could be.
Yeah. Okay. All right. I think we have time for another one or two questions here. Let me see here. How long does it take to implement change? I guess that's kind of a broad question. Maybe let's just assume that they're not a customer's not using change right now, and this is something they want to get set up. Would you say this would be a week or two to get change up and running, or what would you recommend?
So, of course, RightStar can come in and kind of guide you through the process. But if you don't have change at all, let's take it from that perspective, then what you have to think about is, what it is that you want to capture for any of the changes that you're going to perform in the environment. So in other words, if we kind of look at this form and we were to scroll down, you have to really consider what do we want to put into the bucket of a standard change versus a normal change versus an emergency change, and what's going to be our approvals, right? Is it one person for the emergency changes, or is it 3 people and I need to have a unanimous decision from them before we move forward with that emergency change versus standard? So we kind of look, I mean, if you're bringing RightStar in, we're looking at how you're doing things today, and then we're going to line that up with some of the ITIL best practices around change. And then once we have that, then we can build this form so that you can do the implementation into the environment. So the build-out itself is not that difficult. It's all the processes that make up change that become a little bit more involved.
I guess if I were a customer and I didn't have change, I think I would probably want to start pretty slowly and do some homework ahead of time and maybe have a workshop or 2 set up so that I have my processes pretty much mapped out, and then I would design the workflow around those processes. And I guess in this particular case, there's a lot of process work that's already done because it's out of the box. So you could say, okay, well, we're just going to go with an out-of-the-box implementation that follows the ITIL framework, and that's the FootPrints change management module. And we'll change a few things because obviously they're going to each organization is going to be slightly different depending upon their needs and unique situation. So, it sounds like it could probably, if you did your homework first and had a pretty good idea of what you wanted, then it wouldn't really be that major of an undertaking. Again, there's a lot of ifs there. But it's something that I think if you've been, for those of you that haven't done much with change, if you're procrastinating about this because you just, I don't want to get into this is, like pulling teeth, it's not that bad. And once you jump in with both feet, and I think that the end result will certainly be worth it.